All right, we just heard from Tony why he and many other conservatives have called on House Republicans to open an impeachment inquiry. Well, last Friday, Congressman Greg Steube filed 4 articles of impeachment alleging high crimes and misdemeanors committed by President Biden. What do these charges include? Why is now the right time to file those articles of impeachment? Well, I'm extremely honored now to have joining me is himself Congressman Greg Steube. He serves on the House Ways and Means Committee as well as the Select Committee on the Weaponization of the federal government. He represents the 17th Congressional District of Florida. Congressman Steube, great seeing you. Welcome back to Washington Watch.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good to see you, Jody.
Well, thank you. And by the way, you're looking great, looking good. I've shed my tie, so you're making me look bad, I got to tell you. Listen, before we get into the details, Greg, you and many others, I mean, Tony was just with me a few moments ago, and we're talking about the incredible work that so many committees are doing, building a case for impeachment, and you have filed your articles. Why do you believe now is the right time to do so?
So for me, it was the evidence that the Oversight Committee had released and James Comer, the chairman, had released of all the financial information as it relates to the payments that the Biden family got. Over $20 million from Ukraine, Russia, the Chinese Communist Party. That coupled with the testimony we had from Devin Archer, from Tony Bobulinski, from the IRS whistleblowers, to me, it is an incredible amount of evidence of crimes that have been committed, corruption that has been committed, bribery that has been committed. And for me, I couldn't just stand back and allow this to just continue and Republicans not do anything, Americans not do anything, the patriots like myself not do anything. And so we laid out, I encourage the viewers to go and read my resolution, because I lay out all of the evidence and the factual predicate for each one of the articles and the basis under federal law. And in my opinion, it's time to start the impeachment inquiry. And I thought by filing the resolution, that would start the process.
Well, I want to get into that here a little bit more in detail and provide an opportunity where people can go see it. But you mentioned your hearings and so forth, where you've heard the testimonies, you've seen the documents, you've been in meetings with these IRS whistleblowers. How much has all of that influenced you? I mean, you mentioned the Oversight Committee and some of these other committees doing incredible work, but you yourself have seen so much of this. You've heard the testimony. At what point did you decide, I've got to act, and I've got to act right now?
Yeah, it's the last couple of weeks with the release of the financial information and then the testimony of Devin Archer and others. And you put that together with the IRS whistleblowers, the other testimony that we've received, like Tony Bobulinski, and all of this different information. You put it together, and there are a laundry list of crimes that have been committed, over $20 million of which has been received to the Biden family. It's probably more than that. There's more subpoenas to come that Comer said he's going to start subpoenaing Hunter Biden's records. So I think it's long past time. The House started, in the beginning of Congress, we didn't want to rush into it and do what the Democrats did and kind of make a mockery of the impeachment process by just having secret meetings and then one hearing in the Judiciary Committee, and then they have a vote on literally one phone call that the president made to a foreign leader. So I've been respectful of taking our time and gathering the evidence. But at this point, I've seen enough evidence, being a lawyer and a congressman, and looking at all this and serving on some of the committees that have received some of the information, that we need to move forward. I hope that Jim Jordan and the Judiciary Committee, when we get back in September, will start the impeachment inquiry process, and then we'll get more information. James Comer is doing that through the different subpoenas that he's doing, and we'll have more information in a couple of months.
Okay, well, let's go through the 4 articles of impeachment, and I'll just mention one at a time, and you tell us about it. The first article is regarding abuse of power, specifically bribery.
Yeah, so you've got all the payments that have been made to the Biden family, and I'll just give you one example. So there was $3 million that was paid from a Russian oligarch to Hunter Biden directly, and directly after that, there was a dinner meeting between Hunter, Joe Biden in Washington, D.C. with this Russian oligarch. And interestingly, when Joe Biden's president, she's one of the few, if not the only Russian oligarch that's not sanctioned by the United States after the Russians invade Ukraine. That's one of many examples. You got the Burisma payments of $5 million. You've got all these different payments from the Chinese Communist Party, the Russian government, from the Ukraine. That lends itself to the bribery and corruption charges. And then the obstruction of justice charges are based on the IRS whistleblowers' testimony of being in these meetings with DOJ officials that wouldn't allow for subpoenas to go out, for Joe Biden, for warrants to be issued in Hunter Biden's name, for them to go anywhere near Joe Biden based on the evidence that they had, to execute search warrants in Hunter Biden's residence because it was owned by Joe Biden. All these things the DOJ specifically did to obstruct justice.
Wow. All right, so the obstruction of justice is the second article. The third is fraud. What is involved with that one?
Yeah, the fraud upon the American people and the fraud upon these different entities. So Joe Biden's brother would sell the access to the office and say that, hey, if you give us money, we'll give you the ability to have access at the highest, this is exact his quote, the highest levels of government. And those levels of fraud perpetrated on these different foreign entities to pay money to the Biden family just to have access to the government. And again, all of the evidence that supports all of that is underneath each one of those articles.
Wow. And then the final article deals with financial involvement in drugs and prostitution.
So we have evidence now, and Comer released this, that there were bank accounts that were shared between Hunter Biden and Joe Biden sending $5,000 for prostitution, for drug abuse, for all of this. And if you and I were sending money to each other to engage in a criminal act, then obviously we both could be criminal liable for that.
Unbelievable. Well, listen, I again just want to say, Congressman Steube, thank you for your leadership on this. And I do fully expect that we're going to see some movement in September when Congress comes back. You also, and I think it's important for our viewers and listeners to be aware of this, you also filed legislation requiring the Secret Service chief to file a report following the cocaine that was found in the White House, which amazingly just kind of disappeared. Well, it just went away. And so you're pushing back on that. Tell us about that and what you're doing.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm sure you've been there as well. In the times when Trump was president, I've visited the White House many times. You go through 2 or 3 checkpoints with bomb sniffing dogs, drug sniffing dogs. The only way that cocaine would have gotten into the White House would have been somebody within now they're saying the family orbit of Joe Biden. You have Hunter Biden, who has a history of drug abuse, and now you're having the Secret Service who's saying we have no idea where it came from, despite the fact that it's probably the most protected place in real estate in the United States, and one of the self-contended largest law enforcement and best law enforcement agencies in the United States, and they can't tell you where the cocaine came from. So this would require a report to Congress on their investigation, and a lot of information that we currently don't have. Recently, they've said it's within the family orbit, and I think all Americans know exactly where that came from. And that's just the type of craziness that's going on in Washington that we need to stand against.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. You go through a checkpoint after checkpoint after checkpoint, even as members of Congress. And then once you're in the White House, there's video cameras everywhere. And for them to say that there was too many people there, they couldn't really figure out where it came from, is not a believable story whatsoever. Now, you also serve on the Select Committee on Weaponization of the federal government. We've been dealing with this topic a lot. And you know, every appearance is that this Department of Justice under the Biden administration is deliberately, intentionally weaponizing the Department of Justice and going after political opponents or whomever it is that they want to go about, conservatives or whomever. Is this also part of the reason that you decided now's the time for these articles of impeachment?
Well, for me, it was all the facts that we've now ascertained through the different investigations. But obviously, the weaponization, the DOJ and the FBI, we saw that all the way back in 2016 when the secret levels of our government were surveilling the Trump campaign without a warrant, using the FISA process to do that based on an uncorroborated dossier from the Hillary campaign. We've seen it at the highest levels of our government. It's a long past time for Congress to act on this. And I think that Congress, the House specifically, because that's the only body that Republicans have right now, it's time for us to stand up against all these atrocities in the American people.
Well, you brought up former President Trump and the indictment there. Of course, yesterday, the Fulton County District Attorney filed a motion for that to take place on March 4th. Interesting, just the day before Super Tuesday. And we're supposed to sit back and say, no, this is not politically motivated. How much more political motivation can there be than to set that date on March 4th, the day before Super Tuesday?
Yeah, we're turning into Venezuela or Russia or some other China or communist or socialist nation where you have Democrats that are utilizing the justice system to their political benefit and trying to utilize that against the #1 contender to take on Joe Biden in next November, and then setting the trial right before one of the biggest election time periods. I mean, anybody that knows anything about politics and President Trump knows he travels all around the country and does his rallies. And obviously that's going to inhibit him from doing that. This is clearly, and the American people see that. That's why after every single indictment, you have seen Trump's poll numbers increase because of the complete weaponization of the DOJ and the FBI. And Americans can see through all of that, and they know exactly why all of this is happening under Joe Biden's administration. It's election interference, 100%. This is what they're doing. And it's a sad day in America that this type of behavior is happening from bar-certified attorneys.
I wanted to put a clip up here and get your reaction. This is former acting Attorney General under President Trump, Matt Whitaker. He was on with Hannity yesterday, and this is his remarks. I'd like to get your response.
They've now scheduled this first trial on the day before Super Tuesday, where 15 states plus American Samoa are going to go vote. And if you're thinking you can prepare for a trial and visit 15 states in the lead up to Super Tuesday, I mean, that's going to be impossible. So obviously what Greg's saying is absolutely right. This is all planned and coordinated in order to try to prevent Donald Trump from being strong enough to win the election in November.
Now, we were just talking about that, but the phrase that he said there that really piqued me, that this is all planned. I mean, part of what they're coming after Trump and others is that there was a plan to impact the election or reverse the election. This in itself appears to be a plan to interfere with the election. Would you agree with that? I mean, give me your reaction.
Yeah, it is a plan by the Democrats. You know that they're all talking. You know the DOJ is talking to Weiss in Delaware. You know that they're talking to Jack Smith. You know that he's talking to Alvin Bragg. You know that he's talking to this prosecutor in Georgia. They're coordinating all of this. They're trying to make it as difficult as possible. Trump spent like $40 million defending himself in all this egregious action. So not just the human toll that he's dealing with emotionally, but the physical toll of dealing with having to go to all these places, and then the political toll of the expense to his campaign to pay for the defense of all these ridiculous charges. And these are attorneys that were representing him and elections issues in Georgia. You have every right to do that. I thought Alan Dershowitz's comments were interesting. Al Gore paid him as his attorney to defend himself in Florida in 2000 with all the issues here. You didn't see any indictments with that because that's his right to be able to defend himself if they believe that there was some type of issues going on, just like Trump had that right. But the Democrats want to take that away. They know that the only person that can beat Joe Biden next November is President Trump. They're going to do everything they can to stand in the way.
Congressman Greg Steube, thank you so much for joining us on Washington Watch and for unfolding all this for us, not only your articles of impeachment, but the broader issues that you're dealing with there. Thank you so much for your time this evening.
Yeah, good to see you, Jody.